Peter Jedick he is an expert on the 50th anniversary. Obviously, he's the author of Hippies. It's a book about campus life in Kent State during the 1970 shootings, and Peter joins us right now, former writer for the Plain Dealer and Cleveland Magazine and other publications. So you've pondered this, Peter, I'm sure in a very profound way. What did it mean? What did it mean to you? What did it mean to the country?
Hey, Geraldo, nice talking to you. Thank you.
You too.
Yeah, it meant a lot. It still means a lot to everybody involved. 50 years later, it's it's a sad, tragic event. But there's a lot of similarities to what's going on today. The country was very polarized back then. Parents and children within the families, they really had two different views of this Vietnam War. Everyone, our parents.
The nation was absolutely divided. Every family just about divided along the generational lines, Peter, that you described. It's funny now, the divide over the Trump controversies tends to be husband versus wife or vice versa. That's the same generation, but in Kent State it was clearly generational. There was many of I've always maintained looking back on it that the demonstrations, the two that I was arrested for in Washington, D.C., they were all couched in the words of noble justice and social equality and all the rest of it. But what was really on all of our minds was getting drafted to go into the war in Vietnam, which was so unpopular. That's why so many middle-class kids were up in arms for the first time confronting the authorities. But why? We know Kent State was an international tragedy. But why did the National Guard actually, first of all, why did they have live rounds in their rifles, and why did they open fire?
Well, that's the big question. There's been a lot of controversy about that over the years, but my theory, and a lot of people agree with me, is first of all, they did have live rounds. That was standard procedure back then. No one even thought that would be a problem because no one ever thought they'd ever use them. But what happened there, and it built up the whole weekend. It kind of built up. The demonstrators and the kids were clashing, and with the guard.
And what was the specific beef? What was the thing they were arguing about most specifically?
Well, it set it off, as you know, was Nixon's speech on Thursday night. He set it off when he said he's going to go into Cambodia, where he promised to end the war. That's why we elected him in '68. He said he was going to end the war and bring the troops out, but he was taking his time about it. And it looked like he was expanding the war. Actually, it was probably militarily a good idea to cut off the supply lines to North Vietnam. But the whole country went crazy, not just Kent. And then in Kent, they had some little riot Friday night where some of the kids, 90% of the kids weren't agitators or demonstrators, but the parents thought we were. If you had long hair and a beard, you were a troublemaker, And they broke some windows in downtown Kent and had a little bit of an incident. So the mayor asked the Governor Rose to bring in the National Guard. He kind of inflamed it. He came in because he was running for in a primary election for the Senate against Bob Taft. He came in and wanted to show he was a hard guy. So he kind of called us all bums and said we were the worst part of the American society. He kind of branded us like 90% of us were spectators just watching, like I try to say. And he had a few hardcore radicals, So Sunday night, they broke up. Saturday night, the radicals kind of burned down the ROTC building. That was a big deal, the ROTC building, because that was a government building. That's about when the National Guard
So that was the
came in.
first real act of true violence, an arson fire burning down the Reserve Officer Training Center, the ROTC building, the military facility on the campus.
Yeah, that was huge, because here now it's getting serious, They never did prove who did that, but some of the local demonstrators, members, they said, I heard through background that, some of these guys started it, but that was a huge thing. But, most of the kids were just watching, and we all came out and watched it, the thing burned, So then Sunday night they had to try to have us sit in, and the National Guard broke that up. So the tension was kind of growing by Monday, and Monday they had this rally planned, but and the National Guard said, you can't have a rally. We own the campus now. It's martial law. But, there was no internet. Nobody knew that, Nobody knew that they took over. Half the kids weren't even on campus that weekend. They were coming home from Cleveland and stuff, going home for the weekend. And they show up to this rally Monday, and the National Guard, you can't have it, so they show up and they throw some tear gas, and the kids are giving them the finger and screaming at them, calling them baby killers. So the tension was kind of building. And I think one little group of these National Guard guys said they had enough, and they're tired of the kids giving them a hard time. And like I said, 90%, there were about a couple thousand people there watching, but there's only a handful of real protesters, But
All right, describe what happens when the shots start ringing out.
Yeah, so then they went over the hill. And here's another thing. One of my friends has this theory. The wind was a big factor. They threw the tear gas at us, and the wind blew it back in their face. And my friend says that's a big theory. That, so it didn't work. So and they even made the kids even bolder that they picked up the tear gas and threw it at them back at the National Guard. So that got them even more angry, So this small group went over the hill and turned around, and I think their boss said, "Hey, we had enough. Let's show these kids, And they turned around and opened fire. It had to be an order. It never came out. This never came out even after they had lawsuits and everything. But somebody had to give them an order because they all shot within 13 seconds of each other. You just don't turn around and all shoot at the same time without.
And you knew some of the victims?
Oh yeah, I knew two of the girls. And Sandy Shore, she's like you said, she was one of the Jewish girls that got killed, and she was the poster girl for how sad this whole thing was. She was a great kid. She was, I knew her real well. She was just walking to class. She wasn't a protester. She wasn't even watching the protest. She was just walking to class, doing her thing. And she was a real funny girl. She was a great girl. And, she got killed. And how would you feel if you sent your daughter to college and she's walking to class and she gets killed, I mean,
horrifying.
So terrible.
Can you, Peter, give me 30 seconds on what you think it all means now?
It all means is, you got both sides got to find a middle ground. Just like with the, like you say, within your family, you're Democrat and your wife's Democrat, you're Republican. You got to find a middle ground somewhere. You can't let things get this out of hand. This whole thing with Trump, it's too crazy now. Both sides are digging in, and everything's an argument. So you can't let things get as crazy as it was back then again.
All right, I want to, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about what Peter just mentioned because I think it's very profound and spot on. How divided we are now, and isn't that almost a reflection of what it was exactly 50 years ago on May 4th, 1970? Peter, I want to thank you. Peter Jedick, thank you very much. Author of Hippies. What, honey?
That was good marriage advice.
All right, what do you think? 216-578-1100. Geraldo in Cleveland continues with your calls after this. Thanks, Peter.